Hi, and welcome to CDWG's latest session here at Intel Inspires Powerful Partnerships for Esports Success. Whether you're starting a new esports program or looking to level up your current program, today we're going to explore some partnerships that can help you take those next steps. A good friend of mine starts every presentation every day with gratitude. And it's not just a polite thank you in passing, but as an educator and an educational leader for the past 14 years and a father of three with three students of my own here, thank you. Thank you from the students that you support. Thank you from the educators that you support. Thank you from the entire community and this great esports community that you support each and every day in your work. So, quick intro here. My name is Doug Konopelko. I'm the National Esports Manager for CDWG. Over the last few years, I've supported K-12 and higher ed institutions throughout the Southeast U.S. Before that, in the state of Florida, where I live currently, I was the Instructional Technology Director for a school district. Before that, an assistant principal, an educator, so many other things along the way. But really, my passion and my heart lies in the world of education. Right? So now moving more specifically into that esports and how that can have an impact on the world of education that we're in. I love events like this where we get to bring people together and really focus on the why, right? The why are we doing this work, right? How are we improving outcomes? How are we improving the lives and the education experiences of our students through amazing, impactful programs like esports? In addition to my everyday role at CDW, I'm also the host of a series called Focus on K-12, EdTech, and the Education Experience. Through that, I've gotten to interview some incredible esports leaders as well as other education leaders over the last year or so. So really excited about that. Just launched the 50th episode. So go check that out if you get a chance at youtube.com/focus on K-12. So thank you so much for being here. As we said already, one of the most important things for me is understanding how we help folks become successful looking toward the future, right, of whatever their programs look like. So in this space, most of the folks that are here today are going to be K-12 or higher ed, two programs that we're really proud of that we've been working with since the beginning, right? Fresno Unified School District, as we look at the K-12 space, and Full Sail University's Armada Collegiate Esports program. We've been so lucky and fortunate to be able to work with these incredible programs. And what they are great at goes so far beyond just delivering that esports experience, but really integrating it into their culture. And I want us to think about, when we think about amazing programs that we have at our schools, at our institutions, we think about how those things are built. When it comes to something like an education or an instructional program or a new course of study, there's all these things that play into it. So I'm not gonna read you the whole list here, right? But just thinking about the research behind it. There are specific materials, whether that's the core materials or supplementary materials that people use. There's professional development. There's a scope and sequence to understand, where have we been and where are we going? These things are absolutely vital in creating a successful instructional program, a successful academic program. There is so much that goes into understanding the depth and breadth of what needs to be covered, but also what does that support need to look like long term so that we can continue to have these wonderful, successful programs. When we look at extracurricular programs, whether that be a club or another activity or a sport, right? There's similar ideas that go into place here. Right? There are so many facets of what makes a successful program. This isn't all of them. But a lot of times for a coach or for an athletic director, it might start with passion for the game, but there is so much more that is generally in place for most of the extracurriculars, for most of these additional activities that take place at a school or an institution. So there's the training, the practice facilities, uniforms. But behind that, there is a ton of support from the community, within the league itself, from feeder programs that go into these, these booster programs that help support it financially. Because as much as we love our extracurricular programs, we love all of our sports, our clubs, these things do absolutely cost money. And it's important for us to understand not just how do we cover the immediate costs, but how do we build that in to our programs so that we understand how to sustain it in the long run. Right? Because it's one thing to get a program up and running from the start. It's another to have a program that's successful season after season. For esports, that road has been a little bit different. Right? Many times it starts with one really passionate individual who loves the game, knows and understands the game, knows and understands the ecosystem, and that might be it. Right? It may be an administrator that has tapped them on the shoulder and said, we'd like to get into esports. We know that you understand this space. It's you. You're in. Thanks for taking or building our program for us. And what tends to happen is then, we have to go backward and build back up. So I've highlighted in red here, but these are the things that we talked about for a successful instructional program. But some of these become really vital if we want to build a program that lasts within esports. What does the research say about what we're doing in esports? Anyone that's ever had to try to, rally the troops around esports knows that, at K-12, you may have to present to the school board. At higher ed, there may be a committee that you have to present to that wants to understand why we're bringing these types of programs to our schools, to our institutions. And it's really important that we understand, there isn't a ton of research out there, but what is out there, we do need to highlight in our work. And because in many places this is an extracurricular program, everything that we talked about on the extracurricular program side can and does often play a part in the most successful esports programs. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is a lot of things to keep up with. Many times, our esports programs, again, start out by being run by just one or two people. So this is a lot to consider for getting a program off the ground. I had the absolute pleasure to interview Christopher Turner, who is so many things, but an educator and an esports leader are definitely two of the main ones that come to mind. And what he shared was that Rome wasn't built by one man. The relationships are your foundation in the building process. And we were talking about what's important for building a program that can bridge the gap from K-5, 6-8, 9-12 to higher ed. And what Chris shared was that relationships and partnerships are the foundation in that building process. So today, we're going to dive into 7 partnerships to leverage as you build out your network of support for your program. First one here, community and local businesses. Businesses that are in close proximity to your school, they have a lot more tied up in the success of your students. These are folks that the students are walking through their doors every day. They have relationships with these businesses. It's more than just the idea of, they want to have buy-in, but it's really about these community organizations and these local businesses that have supported your school in the past. And they may be looking at future ways to support the school. They may be looking for fresh ideas, new things they can do to help you be more successful in your programs. And maybe esports is that thing for them, right? I know that folks do like to have their name and their support attached to things that have some buzz around them, right? And I think that esports can be one of those. It's a great way to, pitch for sustained support of the program, and not just from the fundraising aspect, but also for real partnership, right? This career support, this idea of being a partner with the institution, providing internships for students, all of those things, providing mentorship for students. These all become really important when we're thinking about what does our relationship look like between our esports program and our community or local business. Up next is faculty and staff. So existing faculty and staff that you already have at your institution. Faculty, we're looking at teachers, curriculum directors, any other subject area experts that can provide guidance on connecting esports into the curriculum. We've talked with some really successful esports programs that still struggle to understand how is this going to fit into our curriculum, our academic life. They understand the student affairs side, the student life side, but really understanding how do we take that next step and get this to be a part of the culture of our world, a part of the culture of our institution. You already have faculty members on site, staff members on site who are subject area experts and can help you drive those conversations. At K-12, we've got folks like the CTE directors, right? Career and technical education directors who understand the career pathways and have a lot of those existing relationships with the community organizations and local businesses already. And they can really help solidify areas that esports may fit within your school. But I also, chose this picture intentionally. Don't forget your staff, like clerical, procurement, facility staff. These people understand how things work at a school. They understand when people are around, when people aren't around, what kind of events draw a crowd, right? They have so much knowledge, not just around procurement and how do we purchase these items, but also just how do things really work at our school. So make sure we're keeping those folks in the loop and leaning on them as partners in the journey. We've also got two organizations here. This is the only time I'll call anything out specifically by name, the only category that has that. But NASEF, the North America Scholastic Esports Federation, and NACAD, the National Association of Esports Coaches and Directors. These two organizations are incredible. They are invaluable resources in sustaining successful programs. From coach development to assisting with tournaments, to providing valuable contacts to you in your program, to understanding what other programs are in your area, to the career pathways. These are just incredible organizations, incredible resources that you absolutely should be taking advantage of if you're not already. Especially for my K-12 folks, when we look at something like NASEF, it really is just an incredible resource for STEM education as it applies to esports, right? I've heard it described by the NASEF folks that esports is a Trojan horse for STEM education, right? So we get the engagement through esports, but the skills that we're really building are invaluable to our students. So again, really important to keep those folks in mind as we move through our partnerships. Up next, athletic directors and coaches. This one feels a little bit more obvious, but these are our folks on our campuses who already truly understand the logistics of moving students around and throughout campus. They understand the logistics of competitions. They understand growing programs. They understand who our school rivals are and what that looks like. They understand booster programs. They understand training. So there's just so many valuable pieces that athletic directors and coaches have already been doing at our schools for so long that we need to make sure we're taking advantage of that experience for our esports program. Here's where we go to existing vendors. And what this means is companies that your school already has a relationship with. The reason that existing vendors can be so important is that they have an existing relationship with your school from the procurement side, right? When we get to large, more complex institutions, more complex schools, more complex districts, procurement becomes more complex. So if we already know we can purchase things through a certain vendor, then they're really valuable to us because we know we don't have to jump through any new hurdles to get there. Now, this doesn't mean the only reason existing vendors are good is because of their ability to work with your procurement department. This also means that, you have some other ways that they can support you, whether it's from a career pathways standpoint, internships, just understanding the ins and outs of what it's like working with your institution, and they're already bought in. Next up is pipeline organizations. At K-12, what we're talking about here are the local colleges, right? So maybe some of the local companies that we've talked about already. At higher ed, these are your K-12 districts and your major local employers. The idea here is that we want to know where our students are coming from and where they're going. And to build a successful program, we've really got to have a good idea of both. So if we take it to the K-12 stage for a minute, obviously we're getting these students as 5-year-olds, so I wouldn't say we're looking too hard at what does esports look like at pre-5 years old. But as we look forward to local colleges and maybe some of those local employers, the idea is if we have an idea of where our students are going, we can forge greater partnerships with those folks to help benefit our program. If I'm at a K-12 school district and I have a successful collegiate esports program locally, I want to take advantage of that to be able to build relationships for my students, right? Like mentorship from those collegiate students down to my high school students. I want to understand what has made those programs successful up in the collegiate space. I want to understand what am I preparing my students for. I want to understand what are the different opportunities that are available at that institution that I can be sharing with my students, right? Some of those beyond the game aspects, right? So for some of my students who really want to be involved in a program, but they're not necessarily going to be my gamer, how can I help them? How can I help them build those relationships, bridge that gap to those local colleges? And for the local colleges or for the higher ed crowd, when you're looking at partnering with those K-12 districts, it's providing those same opportunities for the K-12 districts, but also understanding that, we have students that we want to get in the pipeline to our organizations. So when we look at especially smaller private institutions that are, hungry for students, they might be using esports in that way. For larger institutions that are just looking to build out a wider system of support for their student life initiatives, for keeping students engaged and on campus, especially as things had moved, heavily virtual. What are some things we want to do to make sure if we don't have an enrollment problem, what are some things we can do to entice students to get onto campus, right? Even if, again, we're talking about some of these large major institutions, some of these state colleges. Those are really important, and then making those connections for those students moving forward to those major local employers. Finally, at the end of it all, we've got a Bring It All Together resource. When we're talking about long-term success and the many different facets of a successful program, you really need someone who doesn't just understand one little piece or one little corner of the ecosystem. Obviously, with esports still being relatively new, there have been so many folks who have popped up in recent years that support, one piece, right? Maybe they are a furniture manufacturer. Maybe they're a hardware manufacturer. Maybe they do media production. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with any of those. But because so many programs are supported by just a few folks, it's important to have good partners on your side who understand the ecosystem and understand what we're doing to try to help, right? How all these different pieces come together to build a program. So what I've got here is not everything. This is just some of what you're undoubtedly trying to build out in your program, right? We're not just talking about monitors and devices, but we're also looking at everything else that goes into this, whether it's actually designing the spaces, whether it's understanding how this is going to fit into the curriculum, your program alignment to institutional goals, professional development, coach and player development along the way, the health, wellness, and SEL or social emotional learning side of esports. Not only that, but a really complex partner landscape, right? So this is just a very small sample of some of the folks we either mentioned or are part of the esports landscape. And this isn't even getting into the leagues side of things. But again, we want to make sure that we have somebody that understands what does this all look like, again, for that bring it all together resource. That is our last one for today, our last powerful partnership for esports success. If you're looking for resources, Christopher Turner, as I mentioned before, is incredible. Chris Aviles, Garden State Esports. Jesse Lubinsky and I wrote this article for EdTech Magazine that is based on what you've watched today, goes into some more detail, called Powerful Partnerships for Continued Esports Success and Growth. EdTech Magazine, all in all, is doing a big feature. While they've got a lot of esports content on there already, they're really have built out in November specifically a lot more content around esports. So go there and check that out. If you prefer to, listen to some of these leaders speak, go ahead and check out Focus on K-12. Like I said before, we've had some great esports guests on there, including Chris Turner and Chris Aviles, also Tom Dorr of the British Esports Association, if you want to hear how things are going, outside the US as well. And as you continue to learn, build a new program, grow your existing program, remember to make those deliberate connections to the before and to the after at each level for the benefit of our students' future. I want to thank you for your time here today. I hope you enjoyed this, not just this session, but all of Intel Inspires. And if you want to reach me at all, feel free to reach out to dougcon@cdw.com, at dconapelco on Twitter. You can reach us at esports@cdw.com. Thank you so much. Have an incredible day.